What happens when you give the HOA warnings they disregard and it's time to show them what you're made of? Sit down and let me tell you a tale of a crappy HOA. My husband and I purchased a condo in June of 2021. It was a downsize, but it was gorgeous. We used our extra funds from the sale of our last home to splurge on some nice things like a TV, nice couches, and a purple mattress. That bed was like sleeping on a cloud, and it was amazing. I got curious shortly after and start researching my HOA online, and I come across their Facebook page and the reviews. They have like a 2-star rating, so I was looking for tea or drama. One review catches my eye. It was a seller who we purchased from complaining about a roof leak and mold issues posted in 2018 and saying that the leak was an issue since 2013. Well, crap, I just hoped it was fixed, but was willing to let it slide, even though Florida requires those things to be disclosed, and they weren't. Whatever, I screenshot the post just in case issues popped up later, and she deleted it. Fast forward to the end of 2021. As my husband and I are sleeping, I wake up because there is a wet spot on the blanket. I then notice a drop of water fall from the ceiling. I was ticked. I fell asleep again. This happens maybe a week later, so I call the HOA and leave a message. Didn't get a response. Months go by. It's now March, so I call again and I actually get someone that I could speak with. I tell her about the issue. She claims that she's going to open a work order. Cool, because this is now turning into a small bubble in my ceiling. A month goes by and I realize that the complaint from the previous owner about their failure to fix the issue is what I also was going to be facing. So I decide to email them to allow a paper trail. I sent an email inquiring about the issue in April of 2022. Rinse and repeat for months. I'm either told every time that a work order is open and never hear anything, or I don't hear back from them at all. Somewhere around May or June of 2022, the leak becomes so bad we can no longer sleep in our bed. My husband and I start sleeping on our couches. Weeks later, we decide to buy a queen mattress and stuff it into our daughter's room, and there we have been all this time. 2 different times roofers have knocked on my front door without notice to patch my ceiling. Both times they were asked if the outside was fixed, and both times I was told yes. Both times the leak started up again through the patch. Every time it rains, my ceiling still leaks all over a $3,000 bed that I cannot use, and the moisture has ruined all of my books that are next to my bed now. I tried legal aid, but they don't handle my kind of case. They referred me to the Florida bar, who were very happy to take my $50 and never get in touch. Real estate lawyers wanted anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 up front. We are low income, we can't afford this. And to add insult to injury, the HOA also decided to raise dues in January of this year, without notice, from $254 a month to $381 a month. And for the second time since the leak has started, they've also decided to charge special assessments to replace roofs in the complex. But guess what? None of them are my building's roof. My last resort was going to be contacting the HOA's liability insurance to start a claim, but I decided to try one more lawyer. He called me today, and he specializes in suing HOAs, and he works on contingency. I'll no longer be trying to scare this HOA into action by threatening to sue. I just signed the papers to actually do it. Wish me luck, because I'm entirely done with this situation. Why aren't you going after the previous owner for not disclosing the roofing issues? Well, I haven't found a lawyer that will handle that yet. My primary issue was getting my roof fixed because we have pets and a child and I'm worried about mold. But now that I have a lawyer, I'll be looking into that. If I can't find one who doesn't ask for an arm and a leg up front, I'll probably take some of the money from this case and use it to hire one after. What would you do if this happened to you in this brand new story? Let me know. The HOA gets involved with this one. Let's find out how. Don't want to return my rental deposit? Guess I'll have your eBay and rental business shut down. Posted by Xenon Bro. This happened almost 4 years ago. I was renting out a basement in a married couple's home. They were living there too. I always paid my rent on time and I barely interacted with them. Then it was time for me to move out, so I gave them plenty of notice in accordance with the lease. In my last week, I reminded them to pay me back the deposit that I had paid before moving in, 1 month of rent. I was naive enough to pay the deposit in cash and not get a receipt for it. This was definitely my fault, but hey, I was in college and it was the first time that I was renting a place from someone. They refused to refund back my deposit, and they made some stories up about how I had damaged the carpet, broke some lease rules, and so on. None of this was true, and I even had pictures of the whole basement. I didn't want to bother with legal recourse since it would be really hard proving a cash transaction with no paper trail, so I cut my losses and I let it go. Until I had some ideas. The husband was running an eBay store from his garage. That was his full-time gig. The entire garage was filled with items and boxes and shipping material and so on. It was a very successful business, to say the least. I looked up the HOA for that community and I contacted the head. I asked him if running a business from one's home in that community was in violation of the agreement. The HOA mentioned that it was. I told him everything about this husband's business and gave him the information that I had. He said he would contact the homeowners and look into it. That wasn't it. There's a law in my city that, according to the zoning ordinance, no more than one family plus 2 renters may live in one house. Guess what? It was a pretty big house, and there were 4 other renters living in the same house. I obviously let the HOA know about this, but I also called into the code compliance hotline and I gave them a tip. Both said that they would look into it. Fast forward to earlier this year. I had almost forgotten about this whole ordeal until something reminded me, and I tried to look up this guy's eBay store and it had disappeared. I tried to find him by his name and I couldn't find any clones or other accounts or sites. After letting curiosity get the best of me, I got in touch with the head of the HOA after many emails and follow-ups, and I got official confirmation that soon after my tip-off, the HOA sent him a cease and desist letter to stop running home-based business immediately. The landlord also received a violation in failure to abide by the zoning ordinance. HOA compliance posted by Useless Skin. I hate my HOA. The only reason I live here is because the house was dirt cheap at the end of 2010. For the most part, I haven't had a lot of complaints, but during the lockdown, I decided that I wanted to give my yard some much needed TLC. It started with putting a gazebo in my backyard. I secured all the permissions that I was told that I needed and completed the work. Not 2 weeks after completion, I received a letter stating that it was out of compliance. After weeks of arguing, I had to literally pick up my 3,000-pound redwood gazebo and move it 3 more feet from the wall. Now I get letters complaining about the vegetation in my front yard. I get it, it's been neglected for a while. I'm doing my best to comply, but the trash guy only comes once a week, so I can't throw away much yard waste at a time. Cue more angry letters and enter the malicious compliance. I decided that I'm going to remove my tree and replace it. I also want to just remove 5 plants. One of them is clearly dead by now. Their paperwork specifically says that I have to submit 1 item per design change request. So I submitted 7 different requests, 1 for each plant, 1 for tree removal, and 1 for tree installation. Now they're sending me generic copy-paste replies saying that I can change the yard. None of them specify what design change was approved. I just keep replying to all of them asking for clarification. The last one I got said it was for the tree removal and planting of a new tree, but it didn't include the original letter or even a reference number. So I just replied back that I would like the specific letter included in the email so that I can have an approval paper trail. They burned me bad with the gazebo incident. I won't get burned again, and I'm having a grand time, wasting as much of their time as possible. I smile every time I reply to an email asking for specific information. An update: since many of you are saying that I should run the board, here's why I won't. I have a full-time job that requires at least 2 weeks of travel each month. I have a teenage daughter that I want to spend as much time with as possible before she moves out. We go to a BJJ Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym 4 to 5 nights a week, and I also have a foreign exchange student living with me that wants to see America. My wife's a principal, and I absolutely hate the HOA, so joining that team and dealing with others' hatred for it is most definitely not what I want to do with my free time. I'll play their games, maliciously. And yes, I want to move, but I don't know if you realize this or not, housing prices are insane. I'm staying put for now. HOA lady has to follow rules eventually, posted by Swites. I bought my first house in 1999, and I wanted DirecTV. I put up a satellite dish, which happened to be behind a privacy fence. I also knew the FCC ruling that HOAs couldn't prevent you from putting up a dish due to some malfeasance with home builders who would make shady deals with cable companies to force homeowners to go with the specific company. I think that's right. I figured I wouldn't have any issues since it was behind a fence anyway. I got a knock at my door the next day, and it was my neighbor from across the cul-de-sac telling me she's on the board of the HOA. Your dish is in violation and must be removed. This was my first encounter with her, and I politely explained the law as I knew it and told her to have a nice day. We didn't speak again, and she ended up moving out soon. Well, it turns out she didn't move out and was just renting to some other lady that I never spoke to, and the HOA lady moved back in a year later. There was an easement behind my house which was properly mowed when I moved in. I would hit golf balls down there with my wedge, and my neighbor was into archery and used it as his range. By the second summer that I lived there, it was overgrown and an eyesore. I couldn't even see the creek just behind my house anymore. One weekend, I borrowed my dad's utility trailer, and I spent 3 days clearing out our little section behind the houses, hauling all the debris away, probably 2 trips a day. My arms were covered in cuts from the briars, and apparently I was also dealing with sumac, poison ivy, or some other stuff, because by Monday, I was having an allergic reaction so badly that I went to the doc to get a steroid shot. I laid up in the house all day, and I get a knock at the door. It's the neighbor woman again. Apparently, there's a rule that you cannot store a trailer in the driveway for more than 3 days, and this was day 4. I needed to remove it by the end of the day or face a $500 fine. She handed me a paper listing the rule, and I considered just paying the fine, but instead I angrily drove an hour each way to return my dad's trailer after spending half the day already waiting in a hospital lobby. I got home after dark. What struck me as odd was there was a list of things that you couldn't store in your driveway: personal watercraft, boats, trailers, and so on. The odd part was that motorcycle was listed on there. I don't ride one myself, but I thought it was totally a reasonable thing to keep in a driveway. After I finished all of this work, this woman would routinely walk through my yard without asking, but since she was taking her grandkid to play in the creek, I never even said anything, though it bothered me that she never asked. A year or so later, I wanted to sell the house and move into something bigger. I had talked to a realtor already, and I was getting things tidied up to have the house shown. As I was cleaning out a drawer, I noticed that paper the HOA lady had given me, and I remembered the part about motorcycles being listed. You see, the HOA lady had started dating an older gentleman, and he had moved in with her. Turns out, he rode a Harley, which was always parked in her driveway. She was home, so I walked over there and politely informed her about the violation. The next day, the motorcycle was parked on her back porch, the one she bragged about to everyone who would listen so that she could tell them how much it cost. I laughed to myself, but then I remembered the part about it needing to be behind a fence. Another knock at the door, and within a few days, a fence company was building a 6-foot privacy fence which completely hid her fancy new deck. My realtor had been on my case for at least a week about needing to put up a for sale sign, so as soon as the fence was finished, I told her that it was okay. I sold the house quickly and moved out at the end of the month. Oh, and by the way, the fence was completely hideous and looked out of place because of the way her lot was shaped. Oh, what's the old saying? Rules for thee, but not for me? Look, HOA lady, you're going to obey the rules if OP has to. Alright, what do you think? HOA is angry that I called 311, not 911, to clean up the gasoline leak in extreme heat. Posted by Live Through This 37. I live in a historic building separated into 8 units. 3 weeks ago, where we live, we experienced record-breaking temperatures. Our air conditioning could barely get at 85 degrees inside. I keep smelling automobile-grade gasoline, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I saw that our neighbors, who recently purchased 2 condo units, had used a pressure washer and placed it in the hallway and common area. I'm on the 3rd floor, with no access to exit the building besides the stairwell, and it was left under said stairwell. The temperature in the hallway read 107 degrees. The pressure washer in an adjacent can of gasoline appeared to implode, and someone had covered the mess with 2 mattresses. Not knowing anyone was in the building, we're the only non-snowbirds in our southern home, I called 311 to ask how to safely clean up the gasoline. The fire company came out, per the operator's instructions, not mine, and it turns out the neighbors were home. The husband shoved me, a 5'5", 125-pound female, and called me a stupid idiot and and demanded the fire department leave. Then the HOA president called to say if the fire marshal came and our insurance rates went up, it would all be my fault. Never mind, we live in a hurricane zone. Everyone in the building is actively ignoring me right now. When I checked the community fire extinguishers, they had expired in 2016. The new condo owners who retaliated against me have never lived in a property adjacent to others. They've been doing construction for over 7 months, despite him only being licensed to perform drywall work. I tried to explain that I only called 311 to get advice on how to clean up the gas spill, not to get anyone in trouble, but here I am being treated like a pariah around here. Maybe I'm just venting, but this seems unethical, no? The idiot stored flammable liquids under the only exit route from your home, and the HOA blames you? Time to let the fire marshal know about the expired extinguishers. The HOA should be enforcing rules against people who carry out unsafe practices, not people who report them. This is mental. You gotta report this kind of thing for you and others' safety. Everyone's together. What's going on? These people are nuts.
Neighbors steal our dog, we take their kids. Posted by Philip Hamilton, 19. This happened when I was around 12 or 13, so the details might be a little skewed. Most of my childhood, the house right next to ours had been condemned and abandoned. The property owners were willing to sell the land for $200. That's how bad it was. My family didn't buy it because the land tax in our area is high because we are a school of choice. Eventually, someone bought it and threw a manufactured home on it to replace the condemned home. Soon, a nice old man moved in next door, and we didn't pay close attention because he kept to himself. That was until his daughter moved in with him. Soon, our quiet little neighborhood turned into an episode of White Trash in Trouble. The daughter would fight with her spouse about every little thing and kept my family, along with our neighbors, up half the night. Their kids were the worst part of it all. We never knew how many kids lived in that house because so many different children and adults were in and out of there all the time. Me and my siblings tried to become friends with them because there are not too many kids our age in the town. We ended up being more of their babysitters than just a friendly neighborhood kid. They would come over to our house, and each of my siblings had a group of kids, 3 to 4 each, to watch over. These kids would walk in uninvited into our house while we would play with their sibling in the yard, then steal toys and games from our rooms. Honestly, they stole stuff from all over our house, but this was the main areas. They would either take it for themselves or throw it in our backyard river. They did that a lot if we made them mad for taking back our stuff. They would constantly run in and out of our house, even if no one was with them. They would steal all of the fruit in the basket my mom left out for us. My mom didn't kick them out immediately because she never wanted to deny a kid food if they need it. My mom confronted the parents about their behavior, and their 3-year-old son called her a witch. The parents refused to apologize for their behavior, saying stuff like, "If you loved it so much, you wouldn't have let them take it," or "Don't parent my kid." One thing they would specifically do with me is they pulled on my hair all the time. I'm a tomboy, and they would just call me a boy in a wig because girls can't play with skateboards, girls can't play with ninja action figures, or any other gender stereotype. They would constantly bombard me because they truly didn't know girls were allowed to play with anything they wanted. One of their heavier children stole my skateboard and jumped on it, breaking it in half. Similar to that, so no head vine. Then, they said that I shouldn't have been playing with one anyway. There are plenty more examples, but I think you get the point. The neighbors decided that, because our house was nicer, that they had permission to run an electrical line from our backyard plugs to their house, which in itself is a bad thing, but they decided to run off our electric bill to triple the cost of our original. We were lower middle class and below the poverty level, so we couldn't afford that kind of bill. The rule in our house is, if you're not using it, it is turned off. That's why my parents were awfully surprised to see an $800 electric bill. Eventually, a person from our electric company came out to our house to see what was happening. They found an extension cord running to their house. The electrician simply unplugged it and then warned the neighbors of the legal reasons why they can't do that. Then said that that should be the end of that problem. My mom, politely but sternly, went to the neighbors and told them that this was not okay. The neighbor had a small adult tantrum about it and cussed my mom out, but eventually came back into her home. My mom was obviously not pleased with their behavior, but tried not to escalate the situation any further. Our neighbors tried 1 or 2 more times to run the line from our house to theirs. They would move it at night so we wouldn't see them move it. Each time when we unplugged it, they would cuss us out and send their kids over to destroy something else in our home. Eventually, Mom straight up told them that if they or theirs would come on our property again, she would call the police and press charges. We could still be friends with their kids, but they weren't allowed on our land. They decided that because we won't let them use our electricity, that the next best option was to steal our dog from the backyard and claim that our dog attacked her kids, even though our dog was harmless and cowers at everything due to the bad owners before us. I'm guessing because our dog liked to rip her tags off a lot that the neighbors said that she was a stray, that attacked them. The pound came and took our puppo away. By the time my brothers and I got home, she was already gone. We assumed that she just ran off to our grandmother's who lived down the street. She would do this often because my grandma spoils her. When my parents came home, they about lost it, learning that our dog was missing. We obviously looked for her, but couldn't find her. After 2 days, we found her at the dog pound. The officer said it was obvious that our dog didn't hurt their kids, but they still had to take her in for an evaluation. My parents had spent $200 to get her out. The pound told us why the dog was taken, and my mom said enough was enough. Now, the revenge. When my mom got home, she sent my little brother over to their house to play with their kids. He was still friends with some of them at the time. My brother became a little spy that day. His job was to look around their house and report anything that could be suspicious. We learned from him that they were sending 3 kids to a twin bed. The entire house was cramped and dirty. The old man that lived there was hardly home because he couldn't stand his adult daughter that lived there, but he didn't want to evict her from the home and leave his grandkids homeless. All around, the kids were being neglected. With the information my brother gathered, my mom called CPS, Child Protective Services, on the home. Within the month, all of the children, minus one, who the old man cared for, were removed from the home. While I agree the foster system is bad, it was definitely better than what they were going through in that house. The mother of the children started to fight with the old man, her father, on everything. Because her kids were no longer there as a distraction, the old man was to be her next victim. The old man eventually was fed up with her and kicked her out of the home. All that was left in the home was the old man and the grandson he was fostering. They are both very kind and amazing neighbors. Crazy customer gets a pants full of Jack Daniels and acts shocked when he's caught. Posted by Winter Star Gamer. At the beginning of May, I had gotten promoted to a service manager at a pretty popular Midwestern grocery store. I've been working for this store for about 3 years now, and I'm pretty excited to be finally working my way up the chain. With my new responsibilities as a service manager, I now have many new, interesting stories to share with others. One of my many duties as a service manager is to either open the front end, which is 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., or to close the front end, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., and help watch over the cashiers, customer service, self-checkouts, do overrides, and of course, either open or close the store. It is also important to note that many of the departments in the store have their own hours. For example, the hot food stations tend to close around 9 p.m., and our alcohol department closes at 10. The alcohol department has a gate that keeps customers locked out of the department until the store is fully closed. This story takes place on one of the nights I closed the store. It was about 10 minutes before closing time, and I am chatting with my closing cashier. Let's call her Stella. I tell Stella that I'm going to close one of the two main entrances and that I will be right back to help her with the last two customers that are still in the store. Around this time at night, there are only about a handful of employees in the store. This includes myself, Stella, the other service manager who is running the back room named David, the night stock manager, Caleb, and about 5 stalkers. As I am locking up one of the main entrances, in walks an older guy who is wearing a construction shirt and is looking as if he's in a rush. Before he gets too far into the store, I stop him for a moment. Sir, just so you know, we're closing in about 8 minutes. The guy nods his head and responds with, of course, I just need one thing and I'll be quick. Now, this normally happens, and 90% of the time, they are correct, and they are out of the store pretty quickly. I nod, and the man walks into the store as I go lock the first main entrance. I come back to the registers to help Stella bag the last few orders that are going through her line. I then see Caleb coming up to me about a minute later. Hey OP, do you have the wine and spirits key? I left my keys in my car on accident, and a customer wants to grab something from over there. I say yes, and hand him over my keys that are on my belt. Caleb says thanks, walks away, and I proceed to help one customer load her bags into her electric cart and offer to help her outside. I helped the customer out to her car with her groceries and made my way back into the store with her electric cart to plug it back in. The electric carts are kept in the second main entrance, which is the one I hadn't locked up yet. At this point, it was like 10:59 p.m. I was plugging in the electric cart when I see the man who came in just minutes ago walking out with a weird limp, along with Caleb, David, and 2 other stalkers following him. Caleb isn't yelling, but is obviously very annoyed. Hey, come on, just give us the bottle. We know it's in your pants. We won't call the police. Just hand it over and you won't get in trouble. The guy just responds with mumbling about how he put it back on the shelf. He wasn't stealing crap, and that we were accusing him of stealing. The guy proceeds to walk out of the store to his car and then drives off in a hurry. At this point, I am looking at Caleb in utter confusion. We get the doors locked and then he explains the story. After Caleb had gotten my keys, he went to go let the guy into wine and spirits so he could grab a bottle of alcohol. This is normally no problem, as we let people do this all the time. Caleb had unlocked the gate and let the guy walk inside to grab what he needed. He watched as the guy grabbed a bottle of Jack Daniels off of the shelf and then walk out of the department. The guy says thanks and starts to walk away when Caleb is locking the gate. The guy darts into one of the nearby aisles, and once Caleb was done locking the gate, he noticed the guy come back out from the aisle, this time walking weirdly and without the bottle. Obviously, Caleb isn't stupid and immediately runs after the guy, telling him to stop. This catches the attention of David and 2 other stalkers who happen to be near the front end, and they soon appear, following Caleb, who is trailing behind the guy who very obviously just shoved a bottle of whiskey down his pants. The whole parade of people walks halfway across the store just following this man, telling him to stop before getting to the main entrance. What I still don't understand is that out of all the bottles of whiskey he could have grabbed, we carry some pretty high-end whiskeys, he just grabbed a bottle of crappy $20 whiskey. And before anyone asked, yes, we did check cameras. Yes, he did shove the bottle down his pants while he darted into an aisle. As much as I want there to be a more exciting ending, all we ended up doing was alerting our store director, got his photo from the cameras, and sent the tape to the police. Nothing has really come out of it since, sadly.
HOA Karen goes on a towing and finding spree, but she's not on the board. Click the video on your screen so you find out what happens to HOA Karen, and I'll see you there.